tension gets to a peak where it ends up with inevitably starting World War III. We'll stay in tune to find out what would happen if World War III did happen. And well, hello everyone, welcome to today's video. In today's video, we're going to look into a scenario in which World War III starts. And this will be most likely just two parts. Part 1, Outbreak. Part 2, more than just this. And well, let's just draw conflicts. A conflict, per se. This wouldn't be it. This isn't it, but it's still a conflict. And a big conflict at that. And well, let's look in the first part of this. We'll look at Ukraine, but nothing's going to actually happen here. But to make this, we just need to draw where the front lines currently land. And yeah, about here. And I think a bit over here. And over here. This is what it looks like approximately. Might be less or more in different fronts. And well, for this, we're going to have a... And then Belarus joins for a second invasion, with Russian troops and Belarusian troops launching an offensive from the north towards Kiev. This increases world tension significantly. As this offensive does stall out eventually, but it got pretty far. And well, what else? Let's say tension reaches a breaking point in this area. Yes, everybody's at war here. That's exactly it. It becomes a war in the Middle East. Why is this important to the outbreak of World War III? And well, they end up the red team, yes. As they become aggressive. But fortunately, this does not go well for the dictatorships. It was kind of embarrassing. Embarrassingly bad. Well, Trump trying to make peace, but probably failing at this point. He's probably like, yeah, this isn't over for me. And well, we end up with a Chinese invasion of Taiwan. And well, this creates a lot of tensions. After they land on the island, they face some resistance, but not enough to not do this. And before anyone can react, this is already getting out of control. And well, a bunch of nations along the Pacific join into this war. And well, the West is still planning on what to do about this. But you can see it already started. And well, a few more nations managed to be joined in. We get North Korea, Cambodia, Laos. With not much happening here yet. And well, Pakistan decides to get involved, which does not make India very happy. And well, an offensive ends up launched against Pakistan. And well, crisis after crisis. Let's just say. You may be wondering what this has to do with anything. That's not even that's purple. That's not even the right color. And well, small offenses are launched, especially in Kashmir, with the US trying to piece this, but failing. Everything's just a failure. And then Egypt gets cranky at Ethiopia, ends up declaring war. And Eritrea joins Ethiopia. With Sudan joining this side, as South Sudan decides to join them here. With these two nations joining that side, well, they're in turmoil, so like realistically, they're not doing much. And with this nation getting involved, yes, everybody's getting involved. But not much ends up happening. And there's a lot of turmoil in this area. And while they launch strong offensives there, with very weak offensive launched over here. And while Saudi Arabia attacking Yemen leads to the Middle East ending up fully involved. And well, then they both, then it becomes known as two fronts. As World War III is probably happening, but probably not called World War III. With Iraq deciding, with the help of Iran, to show Saudi Arabia what they deserve. While Saudi Arabia is still doing stuff in Yemen, as they manage to launch some offensives in the Yemen. And while it goes shockingly well, with Sanya falling, and then the fall of the port city of Aden, which leads to the collapse. Yes, the collapse of. And while World War III is definitely happening now, but yeah. With Serbia deciding it's time to do something, and they decide it's time to occupy some land. And them declaring war on Kosovo, yeah, that's what they do. Out of the usual. Albania not happy about this, and they decide to get involved, which leads to an attack on a NATO country, and they don't know what to do. They don't do anything yet, but it is coming, a response. And well, now for the last crisis, yes. Venezuela decides to go ahead with an invasion of Guyana. And, well, Suriname decides to get involved. And, well, doesn't end well. With a big involvement happening. With Colombia and Brazil getting involved. Knowing that there would be more help coming eventually. With this attack on NATO leading to NATO joining, but somebody decides it's not too late and decides to go on peace. Let's see how long that lasts. And well, not all of it, one nation still thinking they can fix this. With this nation, Russia, deciding to use Belarus to launch an invasion. They managed to cut this area off, connecting with their territory. But knowing this is probably only a short offensive. But once they knew what was getting involved, they decided to launch an offensive. And then they send more troops into Ukraine to try to occupy more of it. As they occupy a long area of it, you might think that's kind of out there, but another conflict breaks out between the two nations. Yes, these nations. Algeria, yes. And then a few nations join them. With ECOWAS deciding to get involved, even though it's an economic alliance. But yeah, that doesn't matter. And then these nations end up involved. You may be wondering why. With Azerbaijan and Armenia getting at it again. And Georgia joining against Russia. And what happens in this area? Well, nothing that major, just a tiny conflict. Well, this offensive is in the wrong color. And as you can see, a little bit's happened here. But this time, Armenia is completely, destroyed. While it collapses, this is where it becomes inevitable to avoid. And no one can stop it at this point. It's just gone too far. as minor powers start getting involved. Oh, oops. That didn't work out. Well, now for Australia and New Zealand to enter. And well, war is completely inevitable. Some areas we haven't seen fighting yet, but we will in the next video. And well, Papua New Guinea enters. With after all of Central Asia, Mongolia decides to get involved, and Afghanistan. It becomes known this isn't stopping anytime soon. And well, a few nations in Central America decide to get involved with this, which leads to the rest of North America to get involved, including America, after seeing peace is definitely not an option. Definitely not. And well, the war is officially broke out. But could it be called World War III now? With these nations getting involved, which leads to this. So these nations decide to get involved, including South Africa, which leads to this is the front lines. And this front, which means is fully broke up, with a full-on offensive launched into the Baltics, which quickly captures them all. And well, as for Serbia, an invasion into them happens. And well, quickly they're forced to capitulate. And this is about where Bosnia joins in. And now we got Bosnia into the war. And now, for pretty much what's left of this video, as we can see, the outbreak of World War III has happened. Well, now to just collapse this. Yes, and then America invades Venezuela, completely collapsing it. Not Venezuela, that's Cuba. Now they invade Venezuela. And, well, Venezuela and Suriname are forced to retreat, as they did not get what they wanted. And as for Venezuela, they don't last much longer. Well, yeah. The Iranian offensive continues. Well, the last thing is an invasion by North Korea into South Korea. They managed to rapidly advance in, and then Chinese forces help collapse this the rest of the way. And well, that's pretty much all for today's video. Please like, subscribe, and comment. Wild Mapper out, but not until you subscribe. Bye, guys!